All right. So if you looked at the syllabus or saw a couple of the videos we put out, and I think I already told you this too, but module 4 is another 2 week long module. And the way that the modules stack up, there is nothing due over the Thanksgiving weekend. So if you do have other projects, if you want to get ahead of this project, this is a section that will likely take the most time overall, because this is where you're going to be validating your stance on your individual report. So just take time to knock this out. And with the holiday weekend, didn't want anyone to stress about getting work done then. However, if you want to get ahead, now's a perfect time to do so. Other than that, everything's due on the 6th. We will launch module 5 next Monday. So we'll be similar like module 3, getting half the stuff for module 4 today and half the stuff for module 4 next Monday, and then the introduction to module 5 next Monday as well. So with module 4, the overall theme is analyzing the influences of the growth in eSport. So for those that are doing projects in the course about the impact of YouTube, streaming services, different demographic concerns and issues, this really plays a perfect role for that, but it also plays a perfect role in alignment with the report, because this is where we really need to start breaking down the research that we've done and the readings that we've done to think about, more of the community impact for all the different layers within the industry. The 2 chapters that we're going through are on thoughts, but also waking up as a winner. And if you look at the text, this is about 25 pages in total, so it's not too tough of a reading. Now, for the past few weeks, we've really talked quite a bit about ego and inner self. So when it comes to the processing of thoughts, you get 2 very different response times. So the ego tends to be more calculated. So based on this decision, how's it going to impact my work with others, my reputation? So even though the ego is the first layer of the filtering process when information's coming in, it is a little more calculated based on just the impact that your thoughts and actions have on others. For your inner thoughts, nice way to think about that is intuition. It's that gut feeling where you may have more of a creative tactic come into play, while your ego will be a little more strategic in competition, but also in interpersonal communication. So with your ego-driven thoughts, they stem from different decisions that you've made in the past. It's more systematic or tactical in nature. Kind of just said this, but also your inner thoughts go to those gut feelings. When internal discourse happens, it's important to, when you might have a conflict with another team member or something might not go your way. This is when you really gotta shake them off quickly, because they can be very destructive if your thoughts are just fueling up inside. And whether it's a teammate's inability to adapt, or you just have these mental barriers and you're unable to get past it, let's just really take a step back, stay positive, and just try to shake those off so it doesn't lead to further barriers within competition and team camaraderie. That pairs in as well with positive affirmations. So in the text, you'll see different examples in the following chapter talking about the leadership mindset, what you're doing to root on your team. It's easy at times to voice frustration, and if something goes wrong, you think about different sports, kind of just wear your feelings on your cuffs. So with that, be for the smallest things, whether it's a gain in football, a minor success from a teammate, make sure that we're voicing that. So, just so others, others hear that you're supporting them, that things are going good, even if it's a negative situation. uh, Go into some of those affirmations, we can do this, we'll knock this out. So that positive mindset is imperative in esport, because it's kind of this different team dynamic, where a lot of people rely on their own strengths and successes. So it's good to hear the support of others. When it comes to opinions, with it, this is where the ego really comes into play. So you might have your own thoughts, you do have your own thoughts and your own viewpoints and gratification for different items, but make sure for others that we are vocalizing our views towards them, whether it could be a constructive criticism, a constructive comment, or just simple encouragement. And from the text, really at the end of the day, I thought it was important. The only thing that is important is how we think about ourselves. So yes, it's important it does make an impact how you view the thoughts of others. But at the end of the day, if you're confident, if you're proud of what you're doing, let that be the key driver. Because if you're tearing yourself down and you're experiencing your own barriers, we got to get past our own dilemmas first, and then the words of others really don't matter at the end of the day. Then when it comes to competition, earlier we talked about that it comes in leaps in terms of different successes. Another terminology are waves in competition. So when you're going through competitive gameplay, and even just academia for that matter, sometimes you have a lot of momentum, then you get slowed down for different reasons. In games, you come through different waves that push you through. That could come through training, that could come through just simple repetition. It could come from having a brain break during a tournament. But with that, waves are part of the process, and really are something that you have to plan and prepare for, that you could do tactically, but also with some just momentum that happens just when you start to think about yourself in the process, whether it's stretching, taking breaks, getting sleep before competition. Those are all factors of when the waves come into play. In the pre-test, I believe there was a question about what you should do the day before competition. And I think almost everyone in the class selected, you need to train. Well, based on studies, you need to relax. So it is important to be an expert at your craft. But when you think about the amount of development that could happen the day before, it's pretty minute compared to the added benefit that could come with having more energy. So in the pre-test, and I'm sure you're going to see this in the final test, is probably the quiz in 2 weeks. It's very important just to rest, to relax, to debrief, take time for yourself. Don't put the focus on gaming the day before a competition. Compared to just laying around, like the book says, watching TV is good, but also, get some exercise in. In the final chapter of the text, we're going to talk more about the exercise component of esport, which is something that is overlooked by many recreational e-athletes. But just having a routine truly daily when it comes to gaming, or to complement the gaming, really important to invest time that way. Also, when we talk about preparing the day before, I know a lot of, when it comes to your final exams, when it comes to projects, looking to see what when a lot of assignments were submitted every week for this class, there's always this blast of activity the final few hours before stuff's due. That final cramming comes into play as well. If you were to, if you think the value's more in practice the day before the competition, but that's where you got to make sure you do have adequate sleep. So when you think about your average your sleep schedule, maybe you fall asleep at midnight, wake up at 8 o'clock. For many people, that's that's kind of the norm. So if you do have that balanced cycle the week going into a competition, or when you look at your uh, life as a student at JC, make sure you're doing that before projects are due. So compared to just having one good night of 9 hours sleep, you got to have that balance in your life so your mind's thinking and ready for the challenge day in and day out. On the day of the game, in the text, really what it comes down to is just giving it your all. So when you go in and experience an event, experience a competition, same thing as if you're going through a test or a final exam, you can't focus on the negatives. Just put in your best effort, keep that positive mindset, because that positivity will ultimately lead to greater success, really satisfaction at the end of the day compared to beating yourself up from the early stages. When it comes to the competition, think about what routines you need to do, similar to the routines a week of getting a good sleep and exercising, what you need to do the day of a competition to have that right mindset. Do you need to, when you have breaks, what's the system? Are you going to walk around? Are you going to grab a Gatorade? Are you going to, do you have snacks with you throughout the event? So I know in traditional sports, yeah, you have water on the sidelines, and at halftime you might have a quick boost of granola or something in the locker room. Esports should be the same. So compared to just sitting there and vegging out the whole time, have healthy protein-based snacks, whether it's a little cup of like those salami and crackers or Nutri-Grain bars. It's important to have that with you in practice and competition, just so you stay consistent as you do in real sports. So it is important to have that, to have those resources identified in your practice, just to make sure that keeps with that momentum and the routine. Same thing with that, like we already talked about earlier, being positive, leading by example with the team, supporting them is key to motivating others and building that momentum. And once your teammates trust you, once you build that rapport, it's just going to become easier as time goes on. So you got to have those heightened levels of trust that comes from positive reinforcement, that comes from a simple pat on the back for a good maneuver and a quick defeat. So all that stuff, all that comes with leading with positivity. And final slide for the first part of module 4. I already talked about hydrating, I already talked about cheering it on. And then when you think about it, it all comes down to like, why are you doing this? Like, what value are you looking, what values, why are you doing this at the beginning of the day? So as long as you're living up to those values, if you're developing your skills, if you're improving, if you're enhancing the team dynamic, a victory might not be as simple as taking first in a competition, but it's like, where did that growth occur? Having fun with it. So as a whole, when you're going through esport, academic, in-person sports, the job, make sure you're always working toward those goals and use that as a key metric for success. When we go back to your original discussion question from module 1, we talked about what goals you have for the course, what values you have. Talked about that last week. So with those, make sure for this class, you go back, you go revisit that. How are you advancing towards those goals? Are they a part of the key values that you had or have identified? If they don't match, if they don't align, or if you're falling short or, expanding upon them, now's a great time to reflect midway through the course, just to see what we need to do to make sure we're getting the most out of the academics, but also you do have the appropriate resources available and you're utilizing them to succeed at the end of the day. And with that, that's all I have for module 3. or sorry, not module 3, module 4. Forgot to update that slide. But wondering if you have any questions on that, the project, or the other assignments over the next 2 weeks.